The crystalline spires of Velcara Prime caught the dying light of their sun, scattering it across the royal chamber in fragments of purple and gold. Queen Silratha stood motionless before the vast observation window, her four delicate arms clasped together in a gesture her people made when facing the inevitable. Beyond the transparent wall, her world was dying. The sky burned with the wrong kind of fire, not the gentle glow of their twin moons, but the harsh orange streaks of orbital bombardment. Each bright line represented another piece of her civilization, turning to ash. The Vextor swarm had arrived 3 days ago, and in that short time they had reduced 1,000 years of peace to rubble and screaming. "Your Majesty, the eastern continent has gone silent," her advisor Felvor reported, his voice carrying the hollow tone of someone who had delivered too much bad news. His antennae drooped low against his elongated head, a sign of deep distress among their kind. "The swarm's ground forces have reached the capital city of Shelvar. We estimate no survivors." Silratha's compound eyes reflected the fires outside. She had ruled for 40 cycles, considered young for a queen of the Velcara. Her people were traders, artists, philosophers. Their greatest achievement had been a galaxy-wide network of cultural exchange. Their ships carried poetry and music between the stars, not weapons. They had believed, foolishly perhaps, that civilization had evolved beyond the brutality of conquest. The Vextor swarm proved them wrong in the most violent way possible. "What remains of our defense fleet?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would bring no comfort. 17 ships, Majesty, out of 200. Felvor's mandibles clicked together nervously. "Admiral Kethvar requests permission to fall back to the inner moons. He says we can protect the evacuation ships if we abandon the surface." "And how many can we evacuate?" Silence answered her question more brutally than words could have. The math was simple and terrible. They had billions on the surface. The evacuation ships, even working at maximum capacity, might save a few million. The Vextor would not give them time for even that small mercy. The enemy was not motivated by resources or territory. They were a plague, pure and simple. They consumed worlds, stripped them of all biological matter, and moved on. There was no negotiating with hunger that absolute. Have our allies responded to our request for aid? Silratha already knew this answer too, but she had to ask. A queen's duty was to exhaust every option before accepting the unacceptable. Felvor pulled up a holographic display. Dozens of messages floated in the air, each one a masterpiece of diplomatic language that boiled down to the same meaning. No. The Galactic Council offered their sympathies. The Merchant Coalition promised to remember their sacrifice. The Enlightened Compact would light memorial candles. Everyone had excellent reasons why they could not commit military forces against the swarm. "They are afraid," Silratha said softly, "and I cannot blame them. The swarm has consumed 40 worlds in the past year. What we face here is merely a fragment of their total forces." Another explosion bloomed on the horizon, this one close enough that the window vibrated. Her palace, built to showcase beauty rather than withstand war, would not survive much longer. "There is one option, Your Majesty." Felvor's voice carried a strange hesitation. "The beacon of last hope." Silratha turned to face him fully. The beacon was a relic from an older age, installed by the ancient ones who had first brought their people to the stars. It had never been used, not in all the centuries since. The technology was barely understood, even by their best scientists. The beacon broadcasts on frequencies that span the entire known galaxy and beyond, Felvor explained, pulling up archival data that glowed in the air between them. It was meant as a final measure, a cry for help when all else failed. The ancients believed that somewhere in the cosmos, someone would answer. "Or something," Silratha added quietly. "We could be calling predators to feast on our corpse." "We are already being feasted upon, Majesty." The truth of that statement settled over them both like a shroud. Through the window, another city died. Silratha could see the swarm's harvester ships descending like locusts, their biological hulls pulsing with obscene life as they began their grim work. "Activate the beacon," she commanded. "At this point, any answer is better than none." The beacon chamber lay deep beneath the palace, carved from the living rock of Velkara Prime. Silratha descended the ancient stairs alone, as tradition demanded. The walls were covered in writings from the old language, most of which had been lost to time. She could make out only fragments. "When darkness comes," and "They who answer the call." The beacon itself was surprisingly small, a crystalline sphere suspended in an intricate framework of metal that hummed with power drawn from the planet's core. Silratha approached the activation panel, her primary hands trembling slightly as she entered the command sequence that had been passed down through generations of rulers who had never expected to use it. The sphere began to glow, slowly at first, then building to a brilliance that forced her to shield her eyes. Energy pulsed outward in waves she could feel in her bones. The beacon was not simply broadcasting a signal, it was tearing a hole in the fabric of space itself, sending a message that would travel faster than light, faster than thought, to every corner of the mapped galaxy and beyond into the unknown dark. The message was simple, stripped of all diplomatic niceties and cultural pleasantries. It was the cry of a dying civilization. "We are dying. Please. Anyone." Silratha felt the weight of those words as they echoed into the cosmos. Somewhere out there, someone might hear. Someone might come. Or no one would, and the Velkara would become another footnote in the galaxy's long history of extinction. She returned to the surface to find the palace under direct attack. Vextor flyers screamed overhead, their organic weapons spitting acid that ate through stone and metal alike. Her guards formed a protective circle around her, though she knew their ceremonial weapons would do little against such an enemy. "Get the queen to the evacuation point," someone shouted. She almost laughed. Where was there to evacuate to? But she let them guide her toward the landing platforms where a small ship waited, because even in the face of certain death, her people needed to see their queen fighting to survive. 3 days passed. 3 days of running, of watching more cities fall, of listening to casualty reports that numbed the mind with their scale. The evacuation ships had managed to lift off with their precious cargo of refugees, heading for the outer colonies that might buy them a few more weeks of life before the swarm found them. Silratha sat in a bunker on one of the southern continents, the last relatively safe zone on the planet. Her compound eyes were fixed on the communication console, watching for something, anything that might indicate help was coming. When the signal finally arrived, it was so brief she almost missed it. Not words, not even in any language her computers recognized, just data, coordinates, an estimated time of arrival, and an image. The image showed a world, a small planet, mostly water, with swirls of white clouds wrapped around blue oceans and brown-green continents. It looked peaceful, almost fragile, hardly the home of saviors. "Felvor," she called out, "we have a response." Her advisor rushed over, his antenna perking up with desperate hope. He studied the transmission, running it through every analysis program they had. "The coordinates indicate they will arrive in 7 days," he reported. "The planet, our databases have no record of it. It appears to be from beyond our explored space." 7 days, Silratha repeated. Her people might not have 7 days, but it was something. A thread of hope, however thin. She looked at the image of that blue world again, and wondered what kind of beings called such a place home. Would they be their salvation, or had she simply invited new predators to the feast? Outside, the sky burned red with invasion. Inside, a queen held on to hope, and prayed that the cosmos had heard her plea with kindness. The sensor array in the underground bunker began screaming alerts, 6.5 days after the mysterious transmission. Silratha jerked awake from an exhausted half-sleep, her forearms scrambling to silence the noise that echoed off the bare metal walls. "What is it?" she demanded, her voice hoarse from breathing recycled air thick with the smell of too many bodies in too small a space. The technician on duty, a young male named Vexlar, stared at his displays with all four of his eyes wide in confusion. "Majesty, something just entered the system. The mass readings are, it's big, ship-sized, but the energy signature is unlike anything in our database." Silratha's hearts beat faster. "Is it more swarm?" "No, Majesty, the swarm vessels are organic, grown rather than built. This is metal, refined alloys, and it's broadcasting an identification signal." He paused, manipulating the controls. "It says, UNSC Thermopylae, whatever that means." The response to the beacon had arrived early. Silratha climbed to the bunker's surface observation post, a reinforced dome that provided a view of the sky. Through the haze of smoke that now permanently covered her world, she could see the newcomer with her own eyes. It was not a beautiful ship. The Velkara designed their vessels to be works of art, flowing curves that caught light like sculptures. This ship was a weapon. It bristled with angular gun emplacements and scarred armor plating that spoke of battles survived. The hull was painted in dull gray, marked with symbols and what looked like impact damage that had been patched but not prettied up. "They're hailing us," Vexlar called from below. "Audio and visual. Put them through." The communication screen flickered to life, and Silratha got her first look at whatever species had answered her plea. The face that appeared made her take an involuntary step backward. The eyes were positioned on the front of the head, forward-facing like a predator's. The skin was smooth and oddly colored, a light brown that seemed wrong for a spacefaring species. When the creature's mouth moved to speak, Silratha caught a glimpse of flat teeth that somehow seemed more threatening than proper fangs. "This is Captain Maria Chen of the United Nations Space Command vessel, Thermopylae," the being said. The translation software struggled with the language before settling into something understandable. "We received your distress call. Please identify yourself and state your tactical situation. Not, how can we help, or what aid do you require?" This species thought in military terms first. "I am Queen Silratha of the Velkara," she managed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Our world is under attack by the Vexthor swarm. They number in the thousands of ships. Our defenses have fallen. We are grateful for your response, but I fear one vessel, however well armed, cannot turn the tide of this invasion." The predator eyes studied her through the screen. Then Captain Chen smiled, showing those flat teeth fully. Somehow, it did not look friendly. "Your Majesty, before we discuss what we can or cannot do, I need tactical data. How many enemy ships are in system? What are their capabilities? Do they have ground forces deployed? What are their biological weaknesses?" Chen was reading from a device off-screen, taking notes. "Also, do they communicate with each other? Are they a hive mind or individual actors?" Silratha found herself answering the rapid-fire questions in a daze. This was not how she had imagined first contact with a potential savior species would go. Chen treated it like a job interview, clinical and detached. When the information exchange was complete, Chen nodded. "All right, we'll handle this. Captain Chen, I don't think you understand. There are over 4,000 Vexthor ships in our system. Your vessel, impressive as it is not alone," Chen interrupted. "We're the advanced scout. The cavalry arrives in 2 hours. In the meantime, my crew will begin operations. I have 200 Marines on board. That should be enough to start making these bugs nervous." 200 against thousands of ships and millions of ground troops. Silratha felt hope dying in her chest. "Captain, I appreciate your courage, but 200 soldiers cannot possibly—" "Your Majesty," Chen's smile grew wider, "we were worried this would be too easy. My Marines haven't had a good fight in 3 months." They're getting restless. Now if you'll excuse me, we have a war to win. The screen went dark. Did she just say they were worried it would be too easy? Thelvor asked from behind Silratha, his voice climbing to a pitch that indicated extreme stress. Before Silratha could answer, the human ship moved. It dove into the atmosphere like a predatory bird, heading straight for the largest concentration of Vexthor forces surrounding the capital city. Weapons fire erupted from its hull, precise and devastating. Swarm ships exploded in sequence, each shot finding critical weak points that the Velkara had never managed to identify. The human ship did not fight like anything Silratha had seen before. It did not try to outgun the enemy, or overwhelm them with firepower. Instead, it moved like a surgeon's blade, cutting precisely at key targets. A swarm command ship exploded, and suddenly 24 fighter craft lost coordination. A harvester vessel ruptured, spreading biological contamination that the other swarm ships fled from in confusion. They're using the swarm's own biology against them, Vexlar said in amazement, tracking the battle on his screens. That explosion released a toxin that triggers panic responses in the other ships. The Thermopylae dropped lower, and Silratha could see smaller craft launching from its belly. Drop pods, she realized. The humans were deploying ground forces into the heart of enemy-held territory. She watched through a hijacked surveillance drone as one pod smashed through the roof of a building the swarm had converted into a forward base. The pod's door blew open, and armored figures emerged in a cloud of smoke and noise. The humans wore heavy armor that made them look even more threatening than their bare faces. They moved with purpose and coordination, each one covering angles and sectors like they had done this 1,000 times before. When the Vexthor warriors charged them, 50 of the swarm's best combat forms against 8 humans, Silratha expected to witness a slaughter. She did, just not the one she anticipated. The humans did not meet the charge head-on. Instead, they fell back in coordinated steps, drawing the swarm deeper into the building. Then, the explosion started. The humans had mined the structure in the seconds since landing, turning it into a death trap. Vexthor warriors fell through weakened floors into kill zones. Others triggered proximity mines that filled corridors with shrapnel. When the swarm adapted and tried to flee, they found the exits blocked by human fire teams, who cut them down with weapons that seemed to never miss. In under 3 minutes, all 50 swarm warriors were dead. The humans had lost no one. How? Silratha whispered. How are they doing this? One of the humans, distinguished by different markings on the armor, walked to a swarm corpse and examined it with casual interest. Then the human spoke, voice transmitted through the communications channel. Command, Sergeant Martinez reporting. Enemy forces eliminated. These things are tough, but predictable. They rely on aggression and numbers. Classic Zerg rush tactics. We can work with this. Captain Chen's voice responded from orbit. Good work, Sergeant. Intelligence confirms 4,000 swarm ships in system. We need to cut their command structure. Find their control nodes. Roger that. We'll need more ammunition, though. And coffee if you've got it. Resupply drop in 10 minutes. Make it last. The casual tone horrified Silratha more than anything else. These humans had just won an impossible fight, and were treating it like routine work. They were discussing it the way her people might discuss farming or construction. Over the next 6 hours, more human ships arrived. Not thousands, just 5 more vessels. But each one disgorged warriors who seemed to treat warfare as an art form. They set ambushes that lured swarm ships into killing fields. They hacked into enemy communications and sent false orders that scattered the swarm fleet. They deployed weapons that Silratha's people had never conceived of, because they had never needed to think about murder with such creativity. A swarm boarding party of 200 attempted to take one of the human ships. The Velkara monitoring equipment recorded the entire battle. The humans repelled them using the ship's own systems, venting atmosphere in calculated bursts, superheating corridors, even reversing gravity in sections to send the swarm tumbling into ambushes. When it was over, Captain Shen sent a transmission to the bunker. Her face appeared on screen again, and now Silratha noticed details she had missed before. There was a scar along Shen's jaw. Her eyes had the look of someone who had seen terrible things and learned to live with them. Your Majesty, first day's operations are complete. We've reduced enemy forces by approximately 8% and disrupted their command structure significantly. We'll need detailed maps of your city infrastructure for tomorrow's operations. Also, do you have any stimulants available? Coffee, tea, anything with caffeine? My crews are going to be pulling long shifts. 8% in one day, with 6 ships against thousands. Captain Chen, Silratha said carefully, who are your people? Where do you come from? Chen's smile returned, that predator expression that made Silratha's instincts scream warnings. We're humans, Your Majesty. We come from a little planet called Earth, and we're very, very good at war. The screen went dark, leaving Silratha staring at her own reflection, and wondering what kind of monsters she had invited to save her people. Thelvor had never expected to see the surface of his homeworld again. Yet here he was, standing in the ruins of what had been the Grand Museum of Cultural Exchange, watching creatures that called themselves humans prepare for another day of systematic violence. Queen Silratha had assigned him as an official liaison to the human forces. Someone needed to coordinate with these bizarre saviors, and Thelvor had volunteered because he was curious and foolish in equal measure. Now, 3 days into the human intervention, he was beginning to understand why the rest of the royal court had been content to let someone else take the job. Morning, Thelvor. The human called Martinez waved one thick arm in greetings. The sergeant had removed his helmet, revealing a face marked with old scars and new bruises. His skin was darker than Captain Chen's, and his skull was covered in short fuzzy hair that served no purpose Thelvor could identify. Ready for another fun day of bug hunting? Bug hunting. That was what the humans called war against the Vextor swarm. Like it was recreation. I am prepared to observe, Thelvor replied carefully. His translation implant sometimes struggled with human idioms, but he was getting better at parsing their strange way of speaking. Around them, human marines prepared equipment with practiced efficiency. They checked weapons, distributed ammunition, applied camouflage paint to expose skin. One young female was eating something from a brown package, while simultaneously cleaning a device Thelvor had learned was called a rifle. Private Johnson, you ready? Martinez called to her. Born ready, Sarge, she replied around a mouthful of food, though I gotta say, these ration bars taste like cardboard mixed with sadness. If they tasted good, you'd eat them all at once and have nothing for later. The casual banter continued while they prepared for combat. Thelvor had noticed this pattern. Humans seemed to joke more the closer they got to danger, as if humor was a weapon they wielded against fear. The mission today was to eliminate a swarm nest that had been established in the eastern industrial sector. Intelligence suggested approximately 5,000 swarm warriors were fortifying the position. Martinez had 40 Marines, 40 against 5,000. The math made Thelvor's antenna droop with pessimism. The humans moved through the destroyed city with disturbing ease. They used ruins for cover, communicated with hand signals when radio silence was necessary, and seemed to have an innate sense for where danger lurked. Thelvor struggled to keep up with their pace, his 4 legs working overtime. Contact, 2 o'clock, someone whispered through the communication channel. The Marines immediately shifted formation, each one taking position without needing to be told. Thelvor saw what they had spotted, a swarm patrol of 20 warriors moving through an intersection ahead. Ambush pattern Delta, Martinez ordered quietly. Make it quick and quiet. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. The Marines opened fire with weapons that made soft coughing sounds, so different from the loud explosions Thelvor expected. The swarm patrol dropped without ever knowing they were under attack. The humans advanced, checked each body with quick efficiency, and kept moving. Suppressed weapons, Martinez explained to Thelvor, noticing his confusion. No point announcing our position to every bug in the city. They reached the nest entrance, a massive hole the swarm had burrowed into the ground, where a concert hall had once stood. The entrance was guarded by heavily armored warrior forms, each one easily twice the size of a human. Right, Martinez said, studying the entrance through binoculars. Johnson, set up the speakers. Chen, you're on drone duty. Ramirez, start mixing the cocktails. Thelvor watched in confusion as the humans began preparations that made no tactical sense. One set up audio equipment, another launched a small flying device, a third began mixing chemicals in containers that looked disturbingly improvised. Sergeant Martinez, I do not understand. Should we not call for artillery support or reinforcements? Martinez grinned. Where's the fun in that? Besides, we're trying something new. Watch and learn. The human named Johnson activated the speakers, and suddenly sound blasted across the ruins. Loud, rhythmic noise that Thelvor's translator identified as music, though it sounded more like organized chaos. The beat was aggressive, punctuated by a human voice screaming words in their native language. The effect on the swarm was immediate. The guards at the entrance became agitated, moving erratically. More warriors poured out of the hole, drawn by the noise. That's it, come to Papa, Martinez muttered. Chen, what's the drone showing? Nest is emptying fast. They really don't like Metallica. Estimate 4,000 hostiles heading topside. Perfect. Ramirez, light them up on my mark. The swarm warriors charged toward the source of the noise, a mindless wave of chitin and rage. Just before they reached the human position, Martinez gave the order. Ramirez threw the containers. They shattered on impact, spreading liquid that ignited with explosive force. But these were not simple incendiaries. The chemicals were designed based on swarm biology, creating fires that released toxins specifically targeted at their respiratory systems. The swarm charge faltered as warriors began choking and dying. Those that made it through the flames found themselves facing human weapons that fired with calm precision. The Marines did not panic, did not waste ammunition, did not break formation. They simply killed with mechanical efficiency. When the swarm adapted and tried to flank them, they found the humans had already prepared for that. Mines detonated, traps that had been set hours ago, triggered on schedule. Fall back to position 2, Martinez ordered calmly, as if he was suggesting a change in dinner plans rather than tactical withdrawal under fire. The Marines retreated in coordinated steps, each movement covered by overlapping fields of fire. They abandoned position 1 just as swarm reinforcements arrived, letting the enemy take the empty ground. Then the entire block exploded. Demo charges, Martinez explained to Thelvor, who had been pulled along in the retreat. Set them up last night. Let the bugs think they won that position, then take it away. The battle continued for 6 hours. The humans never fought the same way twice. When the swarm learned to counter their explosives, the Marines switched to biological weapons. When the swarm adapted their formations, the humans attacked from unexpected angles. When the swarm tried to dig in and defend, the humans bypassed them entirely and collapsed tunnels, burying thousands alive. Thelvor saw a human medic named Chen, no relation to the captain. Apparently all humans shared a limited number of names. Treat a wounded Velkara civilian who had been trapped in the combat zone. The medic worked with gentle efficiency, stabilizing injuries and offering kind words. Then, the moment the civilian was safe, the same medic picked up a weapon and returned to killing swarm warriors with the same calm efficiency. The ability to switch between compassion and violence so quickly disturbed Felvor more than the violence itself. During a brief lull in combat, Felvor found himself sharing cover with a young Marine named Davis. The human was barely into adulthood by Velkara standards, yet he fought with the experience of a veteran. "How can you do this?" Felvor asked. "How can your people be so good at killing?" Davis reloaded his weapon while considering the question. "Honestly, we had a lot of practice. Earth isn't a nice place. Everything there is trying to kill you. Weather, animals, diseases, other humans. We evolved to survive all of it. But you are clearly intelligent, civilized. Why continue to refine warfare? Because being smart doesn't mean being safe." Davis checked his ammunition count. "We learned that the hard way. Every war we fought taught us something new. We wrote it down, studied it, taught it to the next generation. After a while, warfare became a science. We know it's terrible, but we're good at it because we had to be." An explosion echoed from somewhere to the north. Martinez's voice crackled over the radio. "Nest is collapsing. All units withdraw to safe distance." The humans pulled back with the same coordination they had shown all day. Behind them, the industrial sector caved in as support structures failed. 5,000 swarm warriors were buried in the collapse. Martinez did a head count. All 40 Marines present and accounted for. Minor injuries only. "Good work, people," the sergeant said. "Let's head back to base. Johnson, can you please turn off that music? My ears are ringing." As they walked back through the ruins, Felbor noticed something that made his heart skip. A human private was crying, tears streaming down her face even as she walked in formation. "Are you injured?" he asked, concerned. She wiped her eyes. "No, we passed by a civilian shelter earlier. There were children's drawings on the walls. Made me think of my little sister back home." She took a shaky breath. "Sorry, I'll pull it together." Felbor realized something profound and disturbing. The humans were not emotionless killing machines. They felt everything: fear, sadness, compassion, joy. They simply had the ability to function despite those feelings, to compartmentalize in ways his people never could. That night, back at the human base, Felvor watched the Marines relax. They played games, told stories, shared pictures of loved ones from their homeworld. They laughed and joked, and seemed like any other civilized species. Until the alarms sounded for the next mission, and they transformed back into efficient instruments of war. Private Johnson noticed him staring, and walked over. "You look confused." "I am trying to understand your people," Felvor admitted. "You are warriors without equal, yet also capable of great kindness. How do you balance these opposing natures?" Johnson thought about it, while cleaning her rifle. "I don't think they're opposing. We fight because we care. Every bug we kill is one that can't hurt your people. We're not monsters, Felvor. We're just really committed to protecting those who can't protect themselves." She smiled, and for the first time, Felvor did not find the expression frightening. Maybe these humans were not monsters after all. Or maybe they were exactly the kind of monsters the galaxy needed. Queen Silratha walked through the recovered sections of her capital city, her 4 legs carrying her past buildings that bore the scars of both swarm occupation and human liberation. 2 weeks had passed since the humans arrived, and the impossible had happened. The Vexthor swarm was broken, not defeated entirely. Remnant forces still fled toward the outer system, pursued by human ships that hunted them with relentless efficiency. But the main force was shattered, their command structure destroyed, their ground forces eliminated or scattered. Velkara Prime would survive. Captain Chen had requested a meeting at the palace, or what remained of it. The crystalline spires had been shattered by swarm bombardment, but human engineers had somehow stabilized the structure and made it safe enough for habitation. They worked with the same efficient violence they brought to combat, turning obstacles into solutions with disturbing speed. Silratha found Chen in what had been the throne room, studying a holographic display of the Vexthor swarm's retreat vectors. The human captain looked tired, her face marked with new lines that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. But when she noticed Silratha's approach, she straightened and offered a respectful nod. "Your Majesty, thank you for meeting with me. Captain Chen, it is I who should be thanking you. Your people have saved my world. I invited you here to discuss appropriate compensation for your services." Chen's expression shifted into something Silratha was learning to recognize as amusement. "Your Majesty, we don't do this for payment. Surely your government requires something in return for committing military forces to a conflict that was not yours." "We require information." Chen manipulated the holographic display, bringing up star charts. "We need to know about every hostile species you've encountered. Tactics, biology, locations, ship classifications, weapons technology. Everything you've learned about potential threats in this region of space." The request made sense, but also sent a chill through Silratha's thorax. "You are cataloging enemies, building a database of threats." "We're being thorough," Chen confirmed. "Humanity learned a hard lesson early in our history. You can't protect people if you don't understand what threatens them. The Vexthor swarm is a known threat now. We'll make sure they don't threaten anyone else. Across the galaxy, we plan to end them." Chen's voice carried no emotion, just statement of fact. "A species that exists only to consume others has no place in a civilized galaxy. We'll track down their main hive fleet and eliminate it." The casual way Chen discussed genocide disturbed Silratha, even knowing the Vexthor were mindless destroyers. "Your people seem very comfortable with violence, Captain." "We're comfortable with necessary action," Chen corrected. "Violence is sometimes necessary. We don't enjoy it, but we don't shy from it either." Thelvor entered the throne room, accompanied by a human Silratha had not met before. The human wore different clothing than the Marines, less armored and more academic in appearance. He carried what looked like scientific equipment. "Your Majesty, this is Dr. James Foster, xenobiologist," Chen introduced. "He's been studying the swarm specimens we captured." Foster approached with enthusiasm that seemed inappropriate given the subject matter. "Your Majesty, fascinating species, truly fascinating. Their biological structure suggests a hive mind with distributed processing. The individual warriors have minimal cognitive function, but collectively they display remarkable adaptability." He pulled up images that made Silratha's stomachs turn. Swarm corpses laid out on examination tables, dissected and analyzed. "We've identified 17 distinct vulnerabilities in their biology," Foster continued excitedly. "Chemical compounds that disrupt their neural connections, temperature ranges that cause system failure, even specific sound frequencies that induce panic responses. With this data, we can develop weapons specifically tailored to exploit their weaknesses." "You seem enthusiastic about this research," Silratha observed carefully. Foster blinked, then had the grace to look embarrassed. "Sorry. Occupational hazard. I got into xenobiology because I find alien life fascinating, not because I want to kill it. But understanding how something works is the first step to either protecting it or defeating it, depending on circumstance." Chen pulled up another display. "Dr. Foster's research has already been transmitted to Earth. Our weapons manufacturers are developing new munitions specifically designed for anti-swarm operations. Within 6 months, we'll have the capability to eliminate swarm forces 3 times faster than we did here." The efficiency of it all was staggering. The humans had fought a desperate battle to save a world they had never heard of, and they were already thinking about how to do it better next time. "May I ask about your homeworld?" Silratha requested. "You mentioned Earth. I know nothing of it." Chen smiled, a genuine expression this time. "It's beautiful, Your Majesty. Terrible, but beautiful. Third planet from our sun. About 70% water. Gravity, about twice what you experience here. Weather that ranges from pleasant to actively murderous. She pulled up images. Silratha saw massive storms that could engulf entire continents. Temperature extremes that would kill most species. Predators with fangs and claws that dwarfed anything on Velcara Prime. This is your world? How did your species survive? By being stubborn. Chen zoomed in on an image of a human settlement built on the side of a mountain, surrounded by dangers. Every generation faced extinction-level threats. Ice ages, droughts, predators, diseases. We learned to adapt or die. Most of the time, we chose to adapt. Thelvor had been quiet until now, but he spoke up. Captain, I have spent 2 weeks with your people. I have observed something that confuses me. Your warriors bond intensely with each other, show great compassion for those they protect, yet they can shut off empathy for enemies completely. How? Chen considered the question seriously. It's about perspective. We don't dehumanize our enemies, or de-alienize them, I suppose. We understand they're living beings, but we also understand that sometimes living beings threaten other living beings. When that happens, we choose who to protect. Your people needed protection. The swarm needed to be stopped. The choice was simple. Simple, Silratha repeated. Nothing about war seems simple. War is never simple, Chen agreed. But the decision to fight can be. Someone threatens innocence, we stop them. Everything else is just logistics. A young Marine entered and saluted Chen. Captain, message from Fleet Command. They're asking about our status and readiness for extraction. Tell them we'll be ready to depart in 48 hours. Operations here are winding down. The Marine saluted again and left. Silratha felt an unexpected pang at the thought of the humans leaving. They terrified her, yes, but they had also saved her people. Before you go, I must ask, Silratha said carefully. Why did you come? You could have ignored our distress call. It was not your battle. Chen met her gaze directly. Your Majesty, humanity spent most of its history divided. Nations, tribes, religions. We found every reason to fight each other. Millions died in wars between human factions. Then we reached the stars and met our first alien species. She paused, gathering her thoughts. We realized something profound. Whatever differences we had among ourselves, we had more in common with each other than with anyone else in the galaxy. So we made a decision. Humanity would stand united, and we would stand with anyone who shared our basic values. The right to exist, to choose your own path, to live free from conquest. A noble philosophy, Silratha said. But surely you cannot protect everyone in the galaxy. No, Chen admitted, but we can try. And when someone calls for help, when someone faces extinction from a mindless swarm of destroyers, we can answer. Because if we don't, who will? Dr. Foster spoke up again. Plus, from a practical standpoint, helping civilizations like yours builds alliances. We're new to this galactic stage, Your Majesty. We need friends. And the best way to make friends is to show up when they need you. The honesty was refreshing. These humans were idealistic enough to answer distress calls from strangers, but practical enough to acknowledge the benefits of doing so. What happens now? Silratha asked. After you leave? We'll leave behind a military advisory team, Chen explained. They'll help train your people in defensive tactics. We'll also provide you with communication equipment linked to Earth's network. If you ever need us again, you can call directly. And you will come? We will come, Chen promised. That's the deal. You're part of the network now, an ally of Earth. That means something to us. Thelvor pulled Silratha aside for a private conversation. Your Majesty, I have been considering what we have learned about the humans. They are not like us. They think differently, fight differently, view the galaxy differently. I know, Silratha said quietly. They terrify me, Thelvor. Such capacity for violence, Such comfort with warfare. Yes, Thelvor agreed. But consider this. They are our monsters now, and I think the galaxy will be safer for it. That night, Silratha stood at the same observation window where she had watched her world burn. Now she watched human ships patrol the orbital space, keeping watch for any swarm remnants. Captain Shen had been right about one thing. The humans were not monsters, despite their compassion. They were monsters because of it. They had weaponized empathy, turned the desire to protect others into a driving force for military excellence. They were the monsters the galaxy needed. And Silratha found that thought both terrifying and comforting in equal measure. 6 months had passed since the human ships departed from Velcara Prime. 6 months of rebuilding, of learning, of adjusting to a galaxy that suddenly seemed smaller and more dangerous than before. Queen Silratha stood in her newly reconstructed throne room, addressing the Galactic Council via holographic communication. The same council that had offered sympathies but no aid when the swarm came knocking. Their compound eyes and alien faces projected from a dozen different worlds, all watching her with varying degrees of interest and concern. The humans left behind military advisors, as they promised, she reported. My people have been training in defensive tactics. We have rebuilt our fleet with an understanding that beauty and function need not be mutually exclusive. Counselor Vethmar of the Merchant Coalition spoke up, his tentacles writhing with barely contained curiosity. And these humans, they asked for no territorial concessions, no trade monopolies, no political control. They asked for information about hostile species, and the right to establish a communication relay in our system, Silratha replied. That is all. The silence that followed spoke volumes. In galactic politics, such restraint was almost unheard of. Where are they now? Asked Counselor Rivthon, her crystalline form refracting light across the communication channel. I do not know, Silratha admitted. They mentioned something about hunting down the main swarm hive fleet, but they share their military operations with no one, not even their allies. She did not mention the nightmares, the dreams where she saw those forward-facing eyes and flat-toothed smiles, the memory of watching humans fight with such terrible efficiency. The Galactic Council did not need to know that their newest member species had developed a healthy fear of Earth's children. Thelvor approached after the council meeting concluded. He carried a datapad filled with reports from the human military advisors. The training is going well, he reported, though our people struggle with some of the concepts. The humans keep talking about acceptable losses and tactical retreats. Such ideas are uncomfortable for us. We are a civilization built on art and philosophy, Silratha said. They are a civilization built on survival. We think in terms of what should be. They think in terms of what is. Perhaps we need both perspectives, Thelvor suggested. The humans have taught us that there is no shame in being prepared for violence, only in seeking it unnecessarily. The communication console chimed with an incoming priority message. Silratha activated it, expecting routine diplomatic communication. Instead, Captain Chen's face appeared, looking significantly more tired than the last time they had spoken. Your Majesty, I apologize for the unannounced contact. I wanted to personally inform you that we have located the Vexthor main hive fleet. Silratha's hearts beat faster. And? We are engaging them now. Thought you might want to watch. Chen manipulated something off-screen, and the view shifted to show a tactical display. What Silratha saw defied comprehension. The Vexthor main fleet numbered in the tens of thousands of ships, a swarm so vast it blotted out the stars. Against them, humanity had deployed 200 vessels. Captain, surely you cannot mean to fight them with such a small force. The human ships opened fire, and Silratha understood. These were not the same vessels that had defended Velcara Prime. These were purpose-built warships, incorporating everything humanity had learned about fighting the swarm. The weapons Dr. Foster had theorized about, refined and deployed on a massive scale. The battle was not pretty. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns, each one supporting the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that eliminated swarm vessels by the hundreds. When the swarm adapted, the humans adapted faster. When the swarm tried to flee, human ships pursued with relentless determination. "We have been preparing for this for 6 months, Chen explained, her voice calm despite the chaos on the tactical display. "Every piece of data we gathered from Velcara Prime went into designing these ships and weapons. The swarm is formidable, but they cannot learn faster than we can teach." Felvor had joined Silratha at the console, watching in horrified fascination as humanity prosecuted a war of extinction against an entire species. "You are going to destroy them completely," he said. "Not a question." "Yes," Chen confirmed. "They have consumed 40 worlds. They will consume no more." When it ended, the Vexthor swarm had ceased to exist as a galactic threat. A few scattered remnants fled into deep space, but the main hive fleet was debris, floating in the void. Shen reappeared on screen, looking exhausted but satisfied. "Threat neutralized. We will spend the next week hunting down the stragglers, but the swarm is finished. I thought your people deserved to know that the things that hurt you are gone." "Captain Chen," Silratha said carefully, "you have just eliminated an entire species from the galaxy. Does this not trouble you?" Chen's expression became serious. "It troubles me that it had to be done. But I sleep well knowing that no other civilization will suffer what yours did." The swarm had a choice: coexist peacefully or face extinction. They chose consumption. We chose protection. This is the result. After Chen signed off, Silratha and Felvor stood in silence for a long moment. "They are truly frightening," Felvor finally said. "Yes," Silratha agreed, "but they are on our side." In the months that followed, word of what happened spread across the galaxy. The Vexthor swarm, a plague that had destroyed dozens of civilizations, had been eliminated by a species that most of the galaxy had never heard of. Humanity became a topic of intense interest and speculation. Some species wanted to establish diplomatic relations. Others wanted to avoid Earth's attention entirely, fearing they might be next. A few hostile powers began making quiet plans to test humanity's resolve. Silratha received regular reports about human activities. They were answering distress calls across multiple sectors, always showing up when someone needed help. They were establishing a network of allied civilizations, not through conquest or coercion, but through simply being reliable. The human military advisors on Velcara Prime had become friends with her people. They taught classes on tactical thinking, but also shared stories about Earth. They talked about their families, their homes, their hopes for the future. They were, Silratha realized, not so different from the Velcara when they were not fighting. One evening, Silratha invited the senior human advisor, a major named Patricia Williams, for a private conversation in the palace gardens. "Major Williams, I must confess something," Silratha said as they walked among the recovering plant life. "When your people first arrived, I was terrified. I had called for help and received monsters." Williams smiled, that human expression that Silratha had learned to read as genuine warmth. "That's not an uncommon reaction, Your Majesty. We know what we look like to peaceful species. But I have learned something in these months," Silratha continued. "You are not monsters despite your capacity for compassion. You are effective protectors because of it. You fight so fiercely because you care so deeply." "That's a kind way to put it," Williams said. "Back on Earth we have a saying: the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We decided we're not doing nothing, ever. Even when the fight is not yours, especially then, because if we only fought our own battles, we would be no different from every other species, but we fight for others because that is who we want to be." Silratha looked up at the night sky, where she could see the stars clearly now that the swarm's ships no longer blocked the view. Somewhere out there, human vessels patrolled the darkness, answering calls from species they had never met, fighting battles that were not their own. I made a plea to the cosmos, Silratha said softly. I begged for salvation from anyone who would listen, and Earth's monsters answered. We prefer the term, concerned citizens with advanced military capabilities, Williams joked. Silratha made the clicking sound that was her species' equivalent of laughter. Whatever you call yourselves, Major, I am grateful you exist. The galaxy is safer with humanity in it. We will do our best to keep it that way, Your Majesty. That night, alone in her chambers, Silratha composed a personal message to Captain Chen. She thanked the human again for saving her people, and asked a question that had been weighing on her mind. How do your people remain so hopeful? You have seen the worst the galaxy has to offer, fought against horrors that would break most species, yet you continue to answer distress calls, to fight for strangers. Where does that strength come from? Chen's response arrived 2 days later. The captain appeared tired, but her eyes held that spark of determination that seemed universal among humans. Your Majesty, we remain hopeful, because the alternative is despair, and despair accomplishes nothing. Yes, the galaxy is dangerous. Yes, there are species like the swarm that exist only to destroy. But there are also species like yours, creators, artists, philosophers, people worth protecting. Every time we answer a distress call, we are making a choice. We choose to believe that civilization is worth defending, that life is worth protecting, that the future can be better than the past. That belief gives us strength. The message ended with Chen smiling that predator smile that no longer frightened Silratha quite so much. Besides, we are very good at war. It would be wasteful not to use that skill for good causes. Silratha saved the message, planning to add it to the official archives. Future generations of Velkara would need to know about the day their civilization nearly ended, and how a species of Deathworld predators saved them. She walked to the observation window and looked out at her recovering world. Cities were being rebuilt. Art was being created again. Children played in streets that had been battlefields. Life continued because monsters from Earth had decided it should. The communication relay the humans had installed sat in orbit, a permanent connection to their network. If danger ever threatened again, Silratha need only send a message, and somewhere in the galaxy, Earth's children would hear the call and come running. The thought was terrifying and comforting in equal measure. As she prepared for sleep, Silratha reflected on the greatest lesson she had learned from humanity. The galaxy was not divided into civilized species and monsters. It was divided into those who protected and those who threatened, those who answered calls for help and those who ignored them. Humanity had made their choice clear. They would answer the call, no matter the cost, no matter the danger. And the galaxy, whether it realized it or not, was better for having such monsters watching over it.